Look at the Torah, this week's Parshas Masei, don't forget. Shh. So we'll learn Masei, page Tzadik Aleph, bottom of the first column. Okay, the pasuk says, Eila Masei b'nei Yisrael, these are the journeys of the Yidden that left Egypt. V'yichtiv Moshe es Mitzrayim l'ma'aseyam. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the going outs for their journeys. Ve'eila Maseim l'Mitzrayim. These are the journeys for their going out. So he says, it's and we need to understand, Lama Gabi Vayichtiv Moshe. By the pasuk of Vayichtiv Moshe, it says first Motza'ehem, and then Ma'aseyhem. First it says they're going out, and then their journeys, and then it reverses it and says Eila Maseim l'Mitzrayim. These are the journeys for the going out. So the Torah switches the order. V'gam Ma'u Vayichtiv Moshe. Also, why does it have to say Vayichtiv Moshe? Moshe wrote it in Mistama Moshe Kosvu, because it's obviously Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the whole Torah, so it doesn't have to say Vayichtiv Moshe es Mitzrayim l'Maseyhem. It's understood. If the Torah says the journeys, it means that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it. So he says like this, okay? So number one, why does it reverse the order from Mitzrayim, the Maseihem, then to Maseihem l'Mitzrayim? And second, why does the Torah have to say Vayichtiv Moshe? Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it. It's self-understood. The inyan is the journeys of the Yidden in the desert. Membes pa'amim, 42 journeys. If you look by Yosef Vayachno, they traveled 42 journeys together with the Orden by Ibn Sayyid Benuchay. The Orden was made not when the liberator left Egypt. It was made after Matan Torah. Therefore, Masei Rishonis, the first journeys until Midbar Sinai, they traveled without the Orden. Okay? So he says that these journeys that the Eden traveled, most of them with the Orden, part of them without the Orden, but these are 42 journeys. They correspond with Shemab, the name of 42 of Ana B'cher Gedulas. The whole thing of Rabbi Chanan ben Akani wrote Ana B'chayach, and he says there are 42 words in Ana B'chayach, and therefore plus the additional words, you have 49 that we say by Sfiras HaImer. So he says the 42 Ana B'chayach is a very lofty Kabbalistic tefillah that we say a few times in davening. He says Av shal yizah b'siba machmas chatam merag b'chayda. So he says like this: the 42 journeys in the Midbar correspond with the 42, the name of Shemab. Okay? Now, l'chayda though, the journeys in the Midbar were negative because of Chetam Meraglim. How could we say that the 42 journeys are holy? Because it corresponds with the Shemab of Ana B'chayach. Av shal yizeh b'siba machmas chatam meraglim. How can you say it's holy when it's negative? Hashem is the cause of all causes, meaning the bottom line is this was the plan. Yeah, Hashem made the Chetam Meraglim because they had to stay in the Midbar for 40 years, and they had to travel 42 journeys. Also, whatever Hashem does is good. So there is in the hidden levels of Torah there's good, and then even in the revealed levels it's good. Gamzul Teva. So he says even according to Nigla, there's a tam. What's the good that the Jews were in the desert 40 years? To find the treasures, because when the Yidden came out of Mitzrayim, and the Goyim heard, they saw what the Yidden did to Mitzrayim, and Tamalek and all that. So the Goyim, what did they do? Like Rashi says, by the Tzoras, Hashem created Tzoras in the houses. So simply because of Lashon Hara. But it says what was good, because the Goyim hid all their treasures in the walls of the house, that the Jews shouldn't find it. Now the Yidden come to Eretz Yisrael, with leprosy and all that, they had to break down the houses. So they found all those treasures. So he says, even Al Pi Nigla, the 40 years in the Midbar were good because the Goyim had 40 years to hide all their treasures that they had. Mashakosa will bottom Malayim called Tuv, like Chazal say. Valpia Nisted, and based on Kabbalah, what was the purpose of being in the midbar? 40 years, Niska Bisfarm is mentioned Kabbalah's farm. Shebardei lahachniya es hamidbar hagadol v'haneira, to subdue the midbar gadol v'haneira. The pasuk calls it this, full of snakes and scorpions and everything. Ayidei members Masei shenos v'chanu k'netz Yisrael me'odim. Meaning like this. Spiritually speaking, midbar represents klipa, shosh klipa tameis. Nothing grows. Shalayashav Adam Sham, there's no inhabitants, no civilization. So what's the spiritual aspect of Jews traveling through the midbar? To elevate the level of Shosh Chipsa Tameis, to elevate it to Kedusha. That was the purpose spiritually of the Jews going through the midbar. Physically, it was to find all the treasures. Spiritually, it was to elevate the midbar, through the members, Masois with the Orin and so on, which is Keneged Shem Mab. Okay? So he says like this. So ultimately, the purpose of the Jews in the midbar was to elevate the midbar. So the Rebbe asked, what does it mean, subduing the midbar? Nobody's living there. What do you mean, subdue it? Subdue is, if you have people, you subdue the people. If a midbar is an empty place full of snakes and scorpions, what are you subduing? What are you working on? What are you elevating? So he says, the midbar is called in Pasuk midbar amim, shumaka yenikas kola klipis, which is the source and nourishment of all klipis. That's the opposite of Yerushalayim, which is makar chol ha'olam kula b'kedusha. Yerushalayim is the source of kedusha. Like it says, all the tefillahs go through Yerushalayim. At least in the time of the Beis Hamikdash they did. All the tefillahs go through Yerushalayim. And so Yerushalayim, like we said, is Yerushalayim. Right? Tyson says Yerushalayim is two words. Yerushalayim, it's a complete level of fear. So Yerushalayim is the source of all kedusha. From the Beis Hamikdash, from Yerushalayim, everything comes from Yerushalayim. And the opposite side, midbar, represents Ashalayoshev Adam Sham. Adam refers to Hashem, meaning there's absolutely no kedusha in the midbar. And when there's no kedusha, then what sets in? Nechashim, Tzraf, and Makrabim. Evil sets in. Like it says by Yosef HaTzadik, when they threw him into the pit, it says, "Aber reik, ein by mayim." So the Gemara in Shabbat actually brings it down. The Gemara in Shabbat says it's redundant. If it's empty, there's no water in it. So the Gemara says it's a double exclusion, which means to add, mayim ein bay, avon nechashim v'akrabim yesh bay. But snakes and scorpions are there. So all the Bali Musa, the Bali Drush, mayim represents Torah. Mayim ein bay. If there's no Torah, if you're empty without Torah, then what sets in? Nechashim v'akrabim. Nechashim represents Chet Tzadas. All that stuff sets in. So he says, the midbar is the marker for every inyan of opposite of Kedusha, opposite of Yerushalayim, which is Zashar HaShemayim. So he says like this, Kizah al-Shar HaShemayim, because Yerushalayim is called Zashar HaShemayim. Like, what should we call it? Yaakov Vinutza by the Cholam, Zashar HaShemayim. Shenim Shechsham Hashpah Milmayla. Kisham tzivas in Ashavayas HaBracha, because that's the place where Hashem gave the bracha. Umisham hayimekablu kol ha'aratzos, in all the lands sustained itself from Yerushalayim. Lachein Yerushalayim hu be'emsa yishuv. So therefore Yerushalayim is in the middle, not necessarily geographically but spiritually. Ve'zeh lo meza'as alikim, and the opposite of kedusha is klipa. So Hashem made a midbar, who marker kol ha-klipis is the source of all klipa. L'chein hu eretz melecha sheli yasapedi. Therefore, it's like a land that doesn't grow anything. Keep a kedusha, because in the world of kedusha, May of Yov, Kedusha gives, Mishkali Shakli. Kedusha doesn't take. That's the story in the Gemara with Rabbi, when his wife told him to get, to bug Hashem, to help everybody else, get us some money. He went outside and the hand came out with a golden leg of a table, that whole story. So that night his wife had a dream that everybody is sitting at a 4-legged table in Gan Eden, and she and her husband are sitting at a 3-legged table. It's a Gemara in Brachos. So therefore she understood it's coming off from somewhere. Yeah. So she told her husband, take it back. So he went out into the field, he davened to Hashem, take it back, a hand came out and took it back. And the Gemara says, that was a bigger nest than the one giving it. Why? Because Kedusha gives, and Kedusha doesn't take. Most people are takers. Yeah, we know that. But in Kedusha, Kedusha gives. So he says, in Kedusha you give, like it says, Va'atem echayes kulam shetamidim shachan hashpois echayes. Kedusha is always giving. Lehepa v'klipa. Klipa says, have. Give. Shemavakshim hakol b'shvil atzman. That they ask everything, it's all about me. Ve'einem mashpiyim luzulasim, they're not mashpiyah at all to others. It says, there's a pasuk that says, V'la'aluka shtevanim. So the Gemara says, it's brought down in Chassidus a lot, that Aluka had 2 daughters, and they would say, have, give. Because Klipa is all taking. Because Bittul is giving, and Gaiva is taking. So he says, L'chein, off a midbar, pasul l'kisei adam. Therefore the din is, like he says, the Gemara says, you have the mitzvah of kisei adam, to cover the blood when you shech the bird or beast. It says, but you can't use kisei adam offer of a midbar. Why not? Because nothing grows from it. So therefore he says, Vayidei shenasu bein b'nei Yisrael. Through this, that the Eden traveled through this midbar, which represents nothing, just taking. They subdue them. U'maisa ovis, and this that happened to the ovis. Pulus labanim affects the aved of the children. I'd say koladedes to the end of all generations. When the expression chazal maisa ovis similar banim, that the actions of the parents are assigned for the children, the Ramban says, Chassidus elaborates on it, that gives the koyach. Where do we get the koyach? To serve Hashem with Ava and Yirah and Rachman, that's all from the office. Ma'isa office, similar bana means, whatever happened to the office is giving us the koyach to do this until the end of all time. The fact that the Yidden traveled through the desert and broke the klipa of the desert, with the ardent, they traveled and all that stuff that happened. Shemach means that because of their avodah, yes, b'chayla sa'adam, a person has ability. Lachni aguf shalei, to subdue his body. Shemishcha dechivya, which is the serpent's skin from the level of klipas. Hein ba'oven chalote v'chet yechmas ni'imi. That the sin killed my mother. What's the origin of all klipa? It says it's taiva. Like it says in Medrash Rabban Tazria. So how do you get, the ultimate goal is to get the body to become subdued. Because that's the whole problem, is the body of Shabbamis. So he says that's only by being Kadesh Yaskim Gama Guf, the Rotten and Nefesh or the kiss, to go that the body should also want via hafta. So how do you get that? You have to convince the body. You have to break the body. You have to convince the body. It says, where does the Yid get the koyach today? Because the whole avoid of Krishma, b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzirach, the yitzir tov yitzir nefesh kish nefesh shabamas. Where do we get the koyach today? Where do we get the koyach today to subdue the klipa of the nefesh shabamas? That's only because they did it in the midbar. So that gives us the koyach for all time. That, in fact, the Rebbe used to say this in Zayar. In the Gemara, you have Amar, whatever. In Zohar, tons of, starting from Pasach Aliyah, which the Tikkun is Zohar, right? Pasach Aliyah, Pasach Reb Shimon, Pasach Rabbi Yossi, Pasach Rabbi Yehuda, it's all Pasachs, not Omar. So Chassidus explains, why does the Zohar say Pasach? Because they opened the channel that because they did it, now everybody else is able to do it. Because Avraham Avinu had Mesiras Nefesh for the arcade and all the other things, we have the koyach now to do it. Because Yitzchak did his thing, the Abbas in the midbar, whatever it was.
So Rabbi, the sand, you can't use it because nothing goes.
Not dirt, he's saying dirt of the midbar. Sand you could use, but you can't use off a midbar. Because midbar in definition means anti-growth.
Rabbi, does it say they were able to break the klipa?
Yeah, that's why they're able to the midbar. And then that's why they were able to go into Eretz Yisrael. And that's how the Rebbe explains the expression, is a very funny expression that the Torah uses. When after the Meraglim, when Hashem wanted to kill the Yidden, so it says, Vayishchotem b'midbar. The Goyim are going to say you shechted them, you took them out of Egypt and you shechted them in the midbar. It's a funny expression, shchit on people. Vayishchotem b'midbar. I mean, you don't say kill them, but you don't say shech them. Yeah? So this explains, because ein shchita l'moshach, shchita means, it's not stam killing. Shchita means you prepare the animal becomes designated and prepared to be able to elevate. So shchita itself means a form of elevation, to draw down. So when it says vayishchotem b'midbar, it means that the midbar prepared the Yidden to be able to elevate Eretz Yisrael, the Zayin Klippas Tameh, the 7 nations. Avolul is that without what happened in the midbar, it's impossible, it would be impossible for a person. It would be impossible. Like the pasuk says in Tom Sefer Ashal Tzadik and Vakish Lamisik. The Nefesh Elmal HaKadosh Baruch Hu Eizeh, if Hashem wouldn't help, he wouldn't be able to overcome. Why could we overcome the Nefesh Abamis? Because because midbar represents the source of all evil. Because that was broken, that was the Oren and the Yidden broke it. Therefore, all the offshoots of the midbar are able to be broken through the person, like it says, Klal Uprat. The midbar was the general breaking of evil, and then the Yidden have the koyach to deal with the details to elevate, to break evil, and elevate it to Kedusha. But we need to understand, though, so bottom line is, the Alter Rebbe is explaining the journey of the midbar, because there's level of midbar klipa, the Jews have to break the klipa, so therefore they traveled in the midbar. So now the Alter Rebbe is going to ask, don't make the klipa and don't make the traveling. Like the Gemara says, you tell a bee, don't give me your sting and don't give me your honey. Just bug off. So Hashem makes evil, and then he says, okay, now you got to break evil. Don't make evil, you won't have it. He says, Hashem. Why did Hashem do this? To create klipa. And then he's going to have to subdue them. He says, don't either have either. You don't have to travel to the midbar. Life would be much easier. He says like this. It says in the pasuk, Parshas Eikev, the Torah says, Moshe Rabbeinu speaking to the Yidden, and says, V'ata Yisrael, now Yidden, Ma Hashem elokechem mi'imach, what does Hashem want from you? He only wants you to be Yira, right? Kiyim liyir. So the Gemara says, I'll take a ma elameya. Don't read the word ma as ma, read it meya. Why? It's a meya bracha shechayiv adam levarich. That a person has to make a bracha, 100 brachas a day. The Gemara tells a story, in the days of David HaMelech, there was an epidemic. 100 people were dying a day. David Melech, 100 people were dying a day. So David Melech found out from upstairs that to rectify it, if you make 100 brachas a day, that will undo the 100 deaths. The Gemara says, this is alluded to in the Pasuk, Va'ata Yisrael Mo Hashem Elokecha She'el Mimach. What does Hashem want from you? The Gemara says, don't read it Mo, read it Meya. That means there's 100 brachas to save the epidemic. So basically, there's an inyan of making 100 brachas a day. Bracha, what is bracha? Is noichach v'nister. Is second person and third person. You make a bracha, it's second person, you, Baruch Ata, and then you say, Asher Kiddushanu b'mitz, Asher Kiddushanu, that he commanded. It didn't say you commanded us. Asher Kiddushanu means that he commanded us, third person. So the pasuk starts noichach, second person, end up third person. Baruch Ata Hashem is noichach. Like it says, Va'ata mechayes kulam, because Ata is Aleph Tav Hey, like we learned this, Aleph to Tav. And with one thought, Hashem created the whole world. Tens of infinite levels of creation. Higher upon higher. Right? And the holy ones, meaning the Malachim and the Eden both. Praise Hashem constantly. After the Malachim say Kaddish, 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 and Baruch, then they say Kadeshim, which were Neshamas. Yaluch Hasela Lein Kes. Okay? So he says like this. We say in Ata Kaddish Shimcha Kaddish, Ukadeshim B'chol Yom Yaluch Hasela. So first there's the Kaddish that the Malachim scream, Kaddish, Kaddish, Kaddish. And then you have after that, then we say Ukadeshim B'chol Yom Yaluch Hasela. Ukadeshim refers to the Neshamas, that they also screaming Kaddish. First you have the Malachim screaming Kaddish, and then you have the Eden. Hagam Shebisvarim. And even though generally speaking. Okay, be continued.